Thank you very much, please. And thank you all for being here as we take historic action to deliver a future of safety and security for Americans of every race, religion, color, and creed. We're joined today by law enforcement professionals and community leaders. Though we may all come from different places and different backgrounds, we're united by our desire to ensure peace and dignity and equality for all Americans. I've just concluded a meeting with incredible families, just incredible families that have been through so much. The families of Ahmaud Arbery, Botham Jean, Antoine Rose, Jamel Roberson, Adiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Darius Tarver, Cameron Lamb, and Everett Palmer. These are incredible people, and it's so sad. Many of these families lost their loved ones in deadly interactions with police. To all of the hurting families, I want you to know that all Americans mourn by your side. Your loved ones will not have died in vain. We are one nation, we grieve together, and we heal together. I can never imagine your pain or the depth of your anguish, but I can promise to fight for justice for all of our people. And I gave a commitment to all of those families today with Senator Tim Scott and Attorney General Bill Barr. We are going to pursue what we said. We will be pursuing it, and we will be pursuing it strongly, Tim, right? Okay. I want to recognize Attorney General Bill Barr, who's spent so much time on this and other matters like this. Bill, thank you very much for being here, along with, great job you're doing, along with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Tim Scott, and they're going to be working on a Senate bill also that can go hand in hand with this. And also Representatives Kelly Armstrong, Louis Gohmert, Jim Jordan, Guy Reschenthaler, and Pete Stauber. And thanks also to Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, the President of the Fraternal Order of Police, Pat Yos, President of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Stephen Cass-Stevens, and many other law enforcement leaders who are going to be joining me at the signing. Today is about pursuing common sense and fighting for a cause like we seldom get the chance to fight for. We have to find common ground. But I strongly oppose the radical and dangerous efforts to defend, dismantle, and dissolve our police departments, especially now when we've achieved the lowest recorded crime rates in recent history. Americans know the truth. Without police, there is chaos. Without law, there is anarchy. And without safety, there is catastrophe. We need leaders at every level of government who have the moral clarity to state these obvious facts. Americans believe we must support the brave men and women in blue who police our streets and keep us safe. Americans also believe we must improve accountability, increase transparency, and invest more resources in police training, recruiting, and community engagement. Reducing crime and raising standards are not opposite goals. They are not mutually exclusive. They work together. They all work together. That is why today I'm signing an executive order encouraging police departments nationwide to adopt the highest professional standards to serve their communities. These standards will be as high and as strong as there is on earth. The vast majority of police officers are selfless and courageous public servants. They are great men and women. When others run away from danger, police run straight into harm's way, often putting their lives at stake to protect someone who they don't know or never even met. Great danger. Police officers run straight toward this incredible harm. Take the World Trade Center. They ran straight into the Twin Towers of 9/11. Many of them never returned. Never returned. Vast numbers of New York's finest never returned. Last year, I presented the Medal of Valor to 6 heroic police officers who ended a murderous rampage so professionally in Dayton, Ohio. Hundreds of people would have been killed, surely, without them. We ask our police to put on the uniform and risk their lives for us every day, the least we deserve and the least we can do, because they deserve it so much. They have to get our gratitude, and we have to give them great respect for what they do. For the job is one of the most dangerous jobs on earth, one of the most difficult jobs on earth. Last year alone, 89 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty. In recent days, 2 members of law enforcement were killed amid riots and looting, and hundreds of police officers were injured just recently. One officer was shot in the head and is now laying in a hospital, almost totally paralyzed. Despite our very good record on crime, law and order must be further restored nationwide, and your federal government is ready, willing, and able to help, as we did in Minneapolis after it got out of control for 4 days. We sent in representatives, commonly known as the National Guard, and it was all put down very quickly. We're willing to help. We're willing to help in Seattle. We're willing to help anywhere you want, and we'll be there very quickly. It won't take long. There will be no more looting or arson, and the penalty will be very grave for those who get caught. Violence and destruction will not be tolerated. We cannot do that. The looters have no cause that they're fighting for, just trouble. Every day, police officers make great sacrifices to keep our communities secure and safe. In 2018, our police arrested nearly 12,000 people for murder, 25,000 people for rape, and nearly 1.5 million for assault. Very dangerous criminals. In many cases, local law enforcement is underfunded, understaffed, and undersupported. 47% of all murders in Chicago and 68% of all murders in Baltimore went without arrests last year. Americans want law and order. They demand law and order. They may not say it. They may not be talking about it, but that's what they want. Some of them don't even know that's what they want, but that's what they want. And they understand that when you remove the police, you hurt those who have the least the most. Nobody needs a strong, trustworthy police force more than those who live in distressed areas, and nobody is more opposed to the small number of bad police officers, and you have them. They're very tiny. I use the word tiny. It's a very small percentage, but you have them. But nobody wants to get rid of them more than the overwhelming number of really good and great police officers. Some of them are standing with me and with me in the audience today, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you. Great job. What's needed now is not more stoking of fear and division. We need to bring law enforcement and communities closer together, not to drive them apart. Under the executive order I'm signing today, we will prioritize federal grants from the Department of Justice to police departments that seek independent credentialing, certifying that they meet high standards, and in fact, in certain cases, the highest standard. That's where they do the best, on the use of force and de-escalation training. For example, many believe that proper training might have prevented the tragic deaths of Antoine Rose and Botham Jean. As part of this new credentialing process, chokeholds will be banned, except if an officer's life is at risk. And I will say we've dealt with all of the various departments, and everybody said, it's time. We have to do it. Additionally, we're looking at new advanced and powerful, less lethal weapons to help prevent deadly interactions. New devices are being developed all the time, and we're looking at the best of them. And cost is no object, no object. Under this executive order, departments will also need a share of information about credible abuses so that officers with significant issues do not simply move from one police department to the next. That's a problem. And the heads of our police department said, whatever you can do about that, please let us know. We're letting you know. We're doing a lot about it. In addition, my order will direct federal funding to support officers in dealing with homeless individuals and those who have mental illness and substance abuse problems. We will provide more resources for co-responders, such as social workers who can help officers manage these complex encounters. And this is what they've studied and worked on all their lives. They understand how to do it. We're going to get the best of them put in our police departments and working with our police. We will have reform without undermining our many great and extremely talented law enforcement officers. President Obama and Vice President Biden never even tried to fix this during their 8-year period. The reason they didn't try is because they had no idea how to do it. And it is a complex situation. Beyond the steps we are taking today, I am committed to working with Congress on additional measures. Congress has started already, and they'll be having bills coming out of the Senate and possibly out of the House. And hopefully they'll all get together and they'll come up with a solution that goes even beyond what we're signing today. But this is a big, big step, a step that hasn't been taken before. But in order to make real progress on public safety, we have to break old patterns of failure. Many of the same politicians now presenting themselves as the solution are the same ones who have failed for decades on schools, jobs, justice, and crime. They are all often, unfortunately, the same politicians running the cities and states where help is most needed. It's an attitude, and it's not working. Today's action is a big part of the solution to restoring, renewing, and rebuilding our communities. For the last 3.5 years, my administration has been focused on creating opportunity, fighting for equal justice, and truly delivering results. Nobody has ever delivered results like we've delivered. Nobody's come close. And we worked with some great people. We worked with fantastic people to get it done. We enacted landmark criminal justice reform, something that nobody else could get done. They tried, and they couldn't even come close. So we got it done, and we got it done powerfully, and people appreciated it. But it's something that, with all the work and all the talk for so many years, criminal justice reform, nobody else could get done. We secured permanent and record funding for HBCUs, that's historically black colleges and universities, numbers that they never thought were possible, and long-term financing because they would come back to the White House after my third year. I said, why are you here again? Great people, about 42 people, the heads of black colleges and universities, great people. They do such an incredible job. And I'd see them after the third year. I say, why are you doing this? We need money again. I said, don't we set it so you have like a 10-year program, a 5-year program? No, sir, for years and years, we've had to come back every single year. I said, well, the only bad thing about what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you long-term financing and I'm going to up the amount, but I won't get to see you anymore. So that's the bad part. But you can focus on education now instead of worrying about dealing with us in Washington. So we did that for the historically black colleges and universities. I'm very proud of it. They're incredible. They're incredible people. Got to know a lot of the heads of those colleges. They do an unbelievable job and don't get the kind of notoriety that they should have. We expanded affordable options for better health care. We created opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott. Brought it to me. We didn't know if we could get it past him, right? But we got it passed, and I think it's probably one of the great things that we've done in this administration. Tens of thousands of jobs, billions and billions of dollars being brought into areas and neighborhoods that would never, ever, ever be taken care of monetarily. Areas that didn't have 10 cents put in them for years and decades, and now people are investing, thriving, and the jobs have come back. We achieved the lowest black, Hispanic, and Asian unemployment rates in American history, and we will do it again. We'll do it again. We're fighting for school choice, which really is the civil rights of all time in this country. Frankly, school choice is the civil rights statement of the year, of the decade, and probably beyond, because all children have to have access to quality education. A child's zip code in America should never determine their future, and that's what was happening. So we're very, very strong on school choice, and I hope everybody remembers that. And it's happening. It's already happened, but it's happening. We have tremendous opposition from people that know they shouldn't be opposing it. School choice. All children deserve equal opportunity because we are all made equal by God. So true. A great jobs market and thriving economy is probably the best thing that we can do to help the black, Hispanic, Asian communities. We saw that just recently prior to the virus that came in from China just a few months ago. What a horrible thing it was all over the world, 188 countries now. And I just want to say we've done incredibly well. We're doing well. Things are happening that nobody can even believe. Our country is opening up, and it's opening up rapidly. We had the best unemployment and employment. We had best unemployment and employment numbers. Think of that. In the history of our country, we're up to almost 160 million people working. There was never anything even close. And that's for almost every group, including black, Hispanic, Asian, women, young people, old people, young people without a high school diploma. Every group. Everybody was thrilled. Everybody had just about high-paying jobs. Our country was never in a better position, and we were planning on massive growth. It was happening. It was already there, including big salary increases, which were already taking place for the last 2.5 years. Big, big increases, record increases. Nobody's seen anything like it. And then we got hit by the virus, along with the rest of the world, and now I'm building it up again. Here we go again. But I'm building it up again, and it's moving fast, and it will be even better than before, because we also learned it will be better than before. Jobs are rapidly coming back, and retail sales that were just announced 2 hours ago, just a little while ago, They're up a staggering 17.7%. Heiser. The projection was anywhere from 6 to 8%. We're up 17.7%. And what does that mean? The stock market went through the roof. These good numbers, they drove it up to a level that we're almost at the same level. Hard to believe. We're getting very close to the level we were before the pandemic and before all of the things that you've seen happened. That's a great thing, because ultimately it's about jobs. It's about, the government can never do anything like a great job for a person where they look forward to getting up in the morning and going to work and getting a much bigger check than they could ever get otherwise. Today and over the last 60 days, we've had one of the biggest stock market increases in the history of the stock markets. And 2 weeks ago, the 50-day increase was the single biggest. Unless my formula is tampered with, we will soon be in a stronger position than we were before the plague came in from China. When the numbers reach the point that I know they will, there will again be a great unity and a great spirit in our country. People will have that job back that they might have lost. They'll be making even more money than they did before. We have some brilliant people working with me, and we put it together. We did it once, and we're very easily doing it again. We're way ahead of schedule. You'll see that. You'll see the third quarter numbers will be very good. You'll see fourth quarter will be really good, and you'll see next year will be one of the best economic years this country has ever had. And it's all happening very quickly, way ahead of schedule, and I think you'll see that. People can't even believe what they're looking at. But on top of all of that, before the end of the year, I predict we will have a very successful vaccine, therapeutic, and cure. We're making tremendous progress. I deal with these incredible scientists, doctors, very, very closely. I have great respect for their minds. And they have come up with things, and they've come up with many other cures and therapeutics over the years. These are the people, the best, the smartest, the most brilliant anywhere. And they've come up with the AIDS vaccine. They've come up with, or the AIDS, and as you know, there's various things, and now various companies are involved. But the therapeutic for AIDS was a death sentence. And now people live a life with a pill. It's an incredible thing. The Ebola vaccine and others, these are the people that have done it, or these are the people that have been around it, and they're all competing. It's an incredible thing. All of these brilliant firms, labs, companies are competing, and I will tell you, we're very far advanced. We've already started tests and trials. So I think we're going to have a very, very good answer to that very, very soon. I always say, even without it, it goes away. But if we had the vaccine, and we will, if we had therapeutic or cure, one thing sort of blends into the other, it will be a fantastic day. And I think that's going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon. Americans can achieve anything when we work together as one national family. To go forward, we must seek cooperation, not confrontation. We must build upon our heritage, not tear it down. And we must cherish the principles of America's founding as we strive to deliver safe, beautiful, elegant justice and liberty for all. I'd like now to invite our great friends, because they are our great friends from law enforcement, the officers representing their groups, to come up as I sign a very important executive order. And we're asking Mitch and Tim and all of the people that are here from Congress to go back and see if they can get something done. I see Louis and Jim Jordan. We're all here, a lot of our representatives from Congress and the Senate, if they can go back and add to what we're signing today, it'll be a big moment. It'll be a big moment. But this is a tremendous step. This is a step that could have been taken years ago, but people chose not to do that. And that was, in my opinion, a big mistake. Could have solved a lot of the problems that we have now. So if I could, law enforcement, if you could come forward. We've had the, please come up. We've had the endorsement of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, International Association of Chiefs of Police, International Union of Police Associations, Major County Sheriffs of America Association, National Association of Police Organizations, National District Attorneys Association, National Sheriffs Association, Sergeants Benevolent Association, and many others. They've worked on this with me and my team. Have been fantastic. I want to thank my team. What a team it is. And we've taken very much into mind what they are saying, because these are the people that keep us safe. And they've done an incredible job. Thank you all very much. Thank you. This is a big one, right? You've seen that signature, right? Okay, hold on. Yeah, big kid,
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take one of these for yourselves. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Americans believe we must support the brave men and women in blue who police our streets and keep us safe. Americans also believe we must improve accountability, increase transparency, and invest more resources in police training, recruiting, and community engagement. That is why today I'm signing an executive order encouraging police departments nationwide to adopt the highest professional standards to serve their communities. We will have reform without undermining our many great and extremely talented law enforcement officers. Today's action is a big part of the solution to restoring, renewing, and rebuilding our communities. We may all come from different places and different backgrounds. We're united by our desire to ensure peace and dignity and equality for all Americans.
Well, hello, Iowa. It is great to be in Iowa on this beautiful June day. To see all of you out in the sunshine, would you join me in just thanking Governor Kim Reynolds and her husband Kevin for the incredible work that they do for the people of Iowa every day. That's a great leader. Governor Reynolds, to Mayor Barney Reuter, and to the first woman ever elected to the Iowa House of Representatives, Speaker Linda Upmeyer. It is great to be back in the Hawkeye State as this state and America make a transition to greatness. And I really appreciate you all being here. I appreciate the warm welcome, the especially warm welcome. I really do. And I appreciate your inspiring example at this great company. More on that in a minute. I mean, to be here at an American company that for 60 years has kept America on the move is incredibly inspiring. I know you had to shut down, but you opened right back up. You put people back to work, and you got America back on the road. Let's hear it for Mike Happy and all the men and women of Winnebago, Iowa. And before I begin, allow me to bring greetings from another friend of mine, a man who loves the state of Iowa, who's actually the best friend American manufacturing has ever had. And he even said the other day that he and Melania might just buy an RV real soon. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. It really is a joy to be here on the President's behalf today as we begin this transition to greatness. You know, as I stand before you today, I'm proud to report that after the difficult times through which we have passed as a nation, that today every state in this country and nearly 3/4 of America's small businesses have already begun to reopen. We're opening up America again, and you're part of that story. And we're building on the strong foundation of the first 3 years of this administration. After we cut taxes, rolled back regulations, fought for free and fair trade, unleashed American energy, supported American ethanol, we saw 7 million jobs created by businesses large and small. And on that foundation, once we started to open up America, you might have seen it a little more than a week ago. In the month of May, the people of America saw the largest one-month increase in job creation in American history. 2.5 million jobs added to our economy. I mean, I can't think of a greater example of America's resilience and strength than those numbers. I mean, the expert economists were all telling us that in that report that we would likely lose up to 8 million jobs. And they said that unemployment, Governor, was likely going to go from 14% maybe up to 20%. But the American people proved them wrong. And businesses large and small created 2.5 million jobs. And I don't know if you heard about it yet, but just this morning, after economists predicted that retail sales would increase by maybe 8% for the month of May, the American people shattered expectations again. Retail sales in America soared to 17.7%, the largest monthly increase ever recorded. America's going back to work. The recovery is on, and we're going to make our economy strong again, I promise you, on the same agenda that created millions of jobs over the past 3 years. And while I'm here in Iowa, I ought to take the opportunity to say thank you for 2 stalwart leaders who stood with President Trump and I every step of the way when we were rolling back regulations, when we were standing up for American farmers, when we were cutting taxes, supporting our military. I mean, this state is so well served by the principled conservative leadership of Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Joni Ernst. Would you mind showing your appreciation for these 2 outstanding leaders? They supported our agenda every step of the way of less taxes, less regulation, and strong support every day for the American farmer. I mean, you all saw the effects of the agenda that we've advanced right here at Winnebago. I'm told after the President signed that tax cut a couple of years ago, Winnebago actually donated $1 million to charity and gave thousands of you employees a well-deserved bonus. It was great corporate leadership. And on that foundation of growth, that generosity, that compassion, that ingenuity, we're driving a great American comeback. As I stand before you today, I promise you, a centerpiece of our transition to greatness is going to be law and order. Let me say from my heart, what happened to George Floyd was a tragedy and a disgrace. It should have never happened. It shocked the conscience of our nation. There's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. but there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting and violence that has ensued. Like every American, we cherish our First Amendment. We respect the concerns of peaceful protesters. And we're going to listen, we're going to learn, and we're going to lead. But we're not going to defund the police. I mean, you all here in Winnebago know, people in Iowa know, most of the men and women who put on the uniform of law enforcement every day are the best of us, the best this country has to offer. But over the past several weeks, President Trump and I have been taking time in this challenging national moment to listen. We've sat down with leaders in law enforcement. We've sat down with leaders in the African American community. As the President said today from the Rose Garden, we are one nation. We grieve together, and we heal together. And today, after listening and learning, President Trump signed an executive order that will make immediate resources and training available to police departments across America to improve standards for the use of force, de-escalation, and accountability. We're going to help our police improve. And I know Governor Kim Reynolds brought about a unanimously passed piece of legislation she signed on the steps of your state capitol just last Friday, creating more oversight and more accountability. And I want to thank you, Governor, for your compassionate leadership, your support for law enforcement, and for bringing Iowa together. And I can tell you, we're going to support law enforcement, and we're going to support our African American communities with resources and reform. But we're not going to stop there. As President Trump said in Dallas, we're going to move an agenda that promotes public safety, but we're also going to keep moving an agenda that promotes jobs, prosperity, and greater educational opportunities for all our minority communities in cities across this country. Just like we did over the last 3 years, which saw the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans. It saw this president create more than 8,000 opportunity zones in communities across the country, attracting billions of dollars of investment. We're going to work to bring jobs and investment to underserved communities. We're going to address the healthcare disparities that we learned especially about during the coronavirus pandemic. We're going to bring market solutions to give our minority communities more choices in their health care. And we're going to keep fighting every single day to give our African American families and every family the right to choose where their children go to school, a public, private, or parochial school. It'll be the parent's choice. And I'm very confident, even in these challenging times, that we'll do what Americans have always done. We'll form a more perfect union. Together, we'll move our nation forward. Together, we'll put Americans back to work. And together, we will open up America again. It's happening before our eyes. You know, the comeback that we celebrate today would not have been possible without your hard work and determination. But let me also say, it would not have been possible without the leadership of President Donald Trump in partnership with governors and with the American people. You know, before we had a single coronavirus case in this country, this president shut down all travel from China. It bought us invaluable time to stand up our national response. You know, it's remarkable to think at the end of February, when he asked me to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we'd actually performed less than 8,000 coronavirus tests in the entire country. But today, we're testing roughly 60 times that number every single day. We've performed more than 23 million tests, more than anywhere in the world. That's American ingenuity at work. And let me take this opportunity to also commend your governor. Governor Kim Reynolds has already tested nearly 250,000 people through the Test Iowa program. In her tireless efforts, she's put the health of Iowans first, and Iowa's been setting the pace in the progress that we've made in this pandemic and opening up this great state again. Governor, thank you again for your leadership and your example. In addition to testing, we've been giving states what they need when they need it. That included more than 158 million masks and gowns and face shields and personal protective equipment here in Iowa alone. And thanks to that same ingenuity and hard work of American manufacturing, I'm proud to tell you, no American with coronavirus who ever needed a ventilator was ever denied a ventilator in the United States. That's a national accomplishment. And from the outset of this pandemic, the American people made great personal sacrifices to protect the health of their family, their neighbors, and people that they never knew. And our doctors and nurses and healthcare workers and first responders rendered care to our families as if they were their own. Why don't we give them a round of applause? We've got heroes. Got heroes in our hospitals and heroes in our first responders. But it was millions of Americans. You all made the sacrifices as well, stayed home from work, home from school, away from places of worship so cherished. Some closed down businesses that took a lifetime to build. And here at Winnebago, you did more than your part. Volunteers from this company, I'm told, made 36,000 masks that were manufactured for hospitals in Iowa. And you also created face shields at this plant and distributed them to healthcare workers and first responders all across the state. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's America. And I want to recognize particularly a craftsman here, I'm told has worked at Winnebago, Iowa for 25 years. He's created wooden cabinetry that vehicles are known for, even building prototype designs. But he's the one who worked with a team of manufacturers, used, I'm told, a 3D printing machine to make face shields, donated them to local hospitals. So would you all join me in thanking somebody who volunteered his energy, his creativity, and made a difference in the lives of the people of this state. Where are you? Rod White? Let's hear it for Rod White. Stand up, Rod. Great job. Great job, Rod. Thank you, Rod. Thanks for bringing your talents to this moment, and thank you all for responding. You know, because of the hard work, people like Rod, and because of all of you, we met this moment. We met this moment not just with a whole of government response, but we met it with a whole of America response. The American people stepped forward just like you all did. And it's a demonstration of the resilience and the faith and the resolve of our people. You know, thanks to the leadership of President Trump and Governor Kim Reynolds and all the good people of the Hawkeye State, I'm proud to report to you, here and across America, we slowed the spread. We flattened the curve. We saved lives. And that's why we're opening up America again. You did it. And as I said at the start, now all 50 states have begun to reopen in a safe and responsible way. You know, even before we got through those 45 days to slow the spread, the President had us issue guidelines to give counsel to governors like yours about how a phased reopening could work to strengthen the economy while protecting the health of our families, while continuing the practices that keep our families and communities safe. People are going back to work. They're going back to worship. We're getting back to our lives. And the American people should be proud. Going back to stores, going back to restaurants, and with the help from the men and women of Winnebago. We're also enjoying the great outdoors, I'm told, like almost never before. We're putting American manufacturing back to work. I know since May 4th, you all have been working hard, been maintaining your social distancing, doing your daily health checks. You've been taking care of your neighbors and your coworkers. You've been putting the health of your neighbors first. And it's a remarkable example that you've set here. Remarkable example, 5,500 strong. The men and women of Winnebago are emblematic of manufacturing workers all across America who are the backbone of this economy. Like a senior machine setup operator who I'm told started working here right out of high school so he could save up for trade school. But he realized he liked working here so much he changed his plans and just decided to stay. I'm told his brother Mark works here too, so does his wife Carla. And on September 8th, he'll celebrate 50 years with this incredible company. Would you join me in showing our thanks and admiration to Glenn Blazer and his whole family? Where are you, Glenn? Stand up. Take a bow, Glenn. 50 years. Congratulations, Glenn. Awesome. I did the math, you know. Glenn must have started here after this place has been going about 10 years. Been here ever since. Made an incredible difference. You helped set the pace for a company that's making a great difference, not only in this community, not only in this state, but all across the nation. You know, I was just told by some of the leadership here at the company that Americans are buying RVs at a pretty rapid pace. In fact, usually, I think we heard that roughly about a third of buyers every year are first-time buyers. It's pushing more like 50%. America is hitting the road in American-made RVs. And you all should be proud that you made it happen. I mean, think about it. As the President has said, gas prices are low, summer's almost here. What better time to go see America in a great RV? You know, so it's great to be back in the Hawkeye State, to be able to talk about this great American comeback. But also to just say thank you, not just on behalf of the President of the United States, but just on behalf of a grateful nation. It's men and women like you and companies like this that keeping America rolling, are getting America rolling again. I mean, it was companies in essential industries that literally never stopped. And companies like this one, like Rod did, who transformed themselves to be a part of the solution for our healthcare workers and for our families. In one of the most challenging times in the life of our nation, it was the people who make things and the people who grow things who stepped up. And so I'm proud to be able to be here, to pay a debt of gratitude to each and every one of you. Just to say thank you for what you've done. You know, it seems like these days, you turn on the television, that it seems like there's more that divides us these days than has ever been true in my lifetime. But, you know, I actually think otherwise. I think there will always be more that unites us in these United States of America than could ever divide us. And chief among those virtues is a love of freedom and the faith of the American people. I mean, the way that the people of Iowa and people across this country have stepped up, kept doing the right things, practicing hygiene and social distancing, but getting back to work, getting back to their lives, getting back out and supporting all those great local businesses affirms my belief that this is a freedom-loving nation. We love our freedom, and we know how to use it with common sense and care for others. But I also know, as the President often says, that this is a nation of faith. I hear it everywhere I go. I was at Sally's restaurant. Try the hamburger. She opened up today for the first time since the pandemic struck. You know, as I walked around Sally's restaurant, I had more than a few people say those words that I hear just about everywhere I go in America, and that is when people look at you and they lower their voice a little bit and they just say, I'm praying for you. And you always know when people mean it, when it comes from their heart. And so let me just say as I close that if you're inclined to bow the head and bend the knee from time to time, I encourage you to do that during these challenging times. I'm always humbled when people pray for us, with those of us that have public responsibilities, but on this one, I'd like you to pray for the more than 116,000 families that have lost loved ones. The Bible says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and I'd just remember them sometime this week in your prayers. Pray for all of those who have labored to provide care month after month, who've looked after our loved ones in hospitals, oftentimes taking the place of family that couldn't be with them because of the strictures of the contagion of the coronavirus. So pray for our healthcare workers and all of those that have been alongside. And in these times of national challenge, I just also encourage you to pray for America. Pray for all the people of America. And claim those ancient words that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, you can believe that he'll do like he's always done. In much more challenging times, he'll hear from heaven and he'll heal this land, this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So thank you, Winnebago. Thank you, Iowa. God bless you for all that you have done at this great company. God bless this state, and God bless America in this great American comeback.
Thank you very much. Please, thank you. Good afternoon. And before we begin, 5 years ago, 9 innocent parishioners of a historically black church, you all remember this horrible event, were tragically killed during an evening Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina. That was a despicable act of evil. Today we remember this somber day as our hearts still break for the victims, and our prayers go with all. That was a terrible event. It was a terrible day. Terrible, terrible day for our country, for the world to witness. Thank you very much for being with us at the White House as we reaffirm our sacred promise to support and protect our great veterans. We love our veterans, and great they are. With honor and courage, these incredible patriots perform their duty to America, and now we must fulfill our duty to them, and that's what we're doing. And we're doing it beyond what anyone's ever done as president or as an administration. We're gathered together to address an especially urgent struggle. Today we're unveiling our roadmap to empower veterans and end the national tragedy of suicide. Tremendous problem. Tremendous, tremendous problem. My administration is marshaling every resource to stop the crisis of veteran suicide and protect our nation's most treasured heroes. They've been through so much, and it's such a deep-seated problem. And we're doing tremendous research and everything you can do, but it is something that nobody quite understands, and they're gaining knowledge, but they don't quite understand it. And I want to thank our Vice President for being with us. And I especially want to thank, frankly, wonderful Karen Pence, who is so committed to the veterans and this particular problem. And thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate it. Thank you. Here as well are several members of Prevent's task force. Prevent's, it's called. Prevent's. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie. Robert, great job. 90% approval rating, the VA. It's way, way up, 90%. That's a number that has never, not even come close to attaining that number. So it's a tremendous job you're doing. Thank you very much. Secretary of Labor, Jean Scalia. Jean, thank you very much. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar. Alex, thank you. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the great Ben Carson. Thank you, Ben. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Thanks, Betsy. And Acting Director of OMB, Russ Vogt. Thank you, Russ, very much. Also with us are Surgeon General Jerome Adams. Where's Jerome? Jerome, hi, Jerome. And he got a standing ovation the other day. I introduced him. He got the only standing ovation, Jerome. What was that all about? And the Executive Director of Prevent's Task Force, Dr. Barbara Van Dalen. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And representatives from several of our nation's leading veterans groups. We have tremendous people in this room, people that work so hard for the veterans, and they love our military, they love our country, they love our veterans. Thank you all for being here very much appreciated. From day one, my administration has been on a mission of historic scope and scale to deliver results for our great veterans. After years of shameful scandal and neglect under the Obama-Biden administration, and scandal and neglect it was, we have fundamentally reorganized the VA from top to bottom, and we've reestablished a crucial principle. American veterans deserve the highest standard of care anywhere in the world, and that's what they're getting. Great leadership. To help veterans get the care they need when they need it, we approved Veterans Choice and made it permanent, and that was a big deal. They've been trying to get it for decades and decades and decades, and we got it. We got it done. And basically that means if you have a problem and you can't get to a doctor, if it doesn't work, you end up going outside, you get your doctor, we pay the bill, and they get immediate service. Some of the veterans were forced in past administrations for a long time, beyond the Obama administration even, but for a long time they were expected to wait a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks just to get to see a doctor. It was a terrible situation. Now we have Veterans Choice. They've been trying to get it so long, and it works incredibly well. And I would say that's a reason why, when I say 90% approval rating, that's probably one of the big reasons. Before I took office, every month seemed to bring a new story of crisis at the VA by our friends from the media. But the days of endless and deadly wait lists are over, and they are never going to come back. We're never going to allow them. Nobody can allow that to come back, what our vets had to put up with. I signed the VA Accountability Act into law, and we've removed more than 9,000 VA workers who were not giving our veterans the care, respect, attention that they've earned. And now that we have accountability, it's accountability, very nice word. If an employee of government mistreats our veterans in any way, does something wrong, isn't good for the VA, the secretary looks at them and says, "You're fired, get out." Before you couldn't do that. We had people for years and years. We had stories, I could tell you, story after story, how bad it was. You had sadists, you had thieves, you had some bad, bad people. So 9,000 have been fired, and they should have been fired a long time ago, but we got accountability, VA accountability passed. We secured record funding for the VA, including $9.6 billion for mental health services in 2020. $9.6 billion. Every VA medical facility now offers same-day emergency mental health, something we didn't have or even come close to having. We have dramatically expanded telehealth for our nation's veterans, and with COVID, it's really become probably the hottest thing there is in medicine, wouldn't you say? I think so. It's gone up in terms of usage by hundreds of times. It was not picking up until COVID came along, and now it's one of the hottest things you have going in the medical world, allowing people to consult with doctors from the comfort of their homes and not having to go out and not having to make long trips, and they get tremendous advice, I hope. The promised White House VA hotline that I've been talking about has fielded more than 400,000 calls right in the White House, successfully resolving 98% of veterans' concerns. It's a great thing. We have substantially cut the wait time for veteran appeals, ensuring all issues are resolved in a swift and timely fashion. It goes very quickly now, very, very quickly. We're modernizing medical records to begin a seamless transition from the Department of Defense to the VA, something others have tried and failed to do. They've tried it for decades, a long time. They wanted to do it. It's actually not as easy as it sounds, getting it done, but we got it done. The VA has also cut opioid prescriptions by 35% since 2017, and we're committed to defeating the opioid epidemic in America. We've brought it down by as much as 17% in some areas, 19, 20% in other areas. But that still means you have a lot left, but a lot of good things are happening. I have to say our border, where much of this comes in, drugs come in. We have a drug problem, we have an opioid problem. It's all the same big problem, but our border is now as secure as it's been in many, many years. It's, the wall is now up to mile 212, and wherever we have the wall, that takes care of that area completely. But we're now down to among the lowest numbers we've ever had on the border, and we have, I want to thank the President of Mexico, because we have 17,000 troops right now on the border, Mexican troops, and really helping us a lot. The number of veterans who say they trust the VA services has increased 19% under this administration. That's a tremendous increase, but I'm still more impressed. It's an all-time high, by the way, but I'm still more impressed by the 90 to 91% number. That's the number I'm going to use from now on. All right, can I do that, Robert? I like that. 91%. Can you imagine if you were a politician, you had a 91% approval rating? That would be pretty good. But there's more work to do. Ending the tragedy of veteran suicide demands bold action at every level of society. 20 veterans and service members take their own lives every single day. The loss of our heroes breaks our hearts and pains our souls. 1 year ago, I signed an executive order establishing Prevent's task force to develop a nationwide strategy to support our veterans in distress and stop the grave tragedy of veteran suicide. Today, thanks to the leadership of Secretary Wilkie, it's been outstanding, I'm proud to announce that we are taking this critical initiative to the next level. Following the ambitious roadmap the task force has developed over the last year, you'll see things happening that nobody would have ever thought even possible. To lead this effort, Mrs. Pence and a team of ambassadors that she was very much involved with in choosing, including the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams. You're only there, Jerome, because Mrs. Pence wanted you there. Okay, that's a nice compliment. She's tough. That's a nice compliment. We'll launch a national public awareness campaign in the coming months. This historic campaign will mobilize every sector of American society to encourage heroes in need, empower them with the best prevention practices, and help every veteran thrive in their lives after service. They come home from these active battlefields and active places, and all of a sudden they're left sometimes alone, and you have a hard time with it. They fought our battles overseas, and now we must join them in winning this new battle at home. There's no single solution to this issue. Every resource must be brought to bear. We're expanding our partnerships with military and veteran organizations. universities, faith-based leaders, businesses, nonprofits, and all levels of government to establish specialized support systems for our veterans. The task force has already partnered with 30 large corporations to help them prioritize the mental health of their employees, and we will continue adding to that number, and the number is growing very rapidly, very, very rapidly. We're also launching a national research strategy. The Prevents Office will work with the greatest scientific minds across our nation to evaluate research to better understand the trauma service members face. They face tremendous trauma. Identify effective treatments and communicate their findings to the public. The Prevents Office is currently reviewing the $1.5 billion of federal funding committed to suicide prevention to make sure research goes where it is most needed in order to save lives and to make lives better. Here with us today is former Marine and Coast Guardsman Chad Heiser, who can share with us his personal testimony about the importance of the steps we're taking today. And Chad, if I could, please, would you say a few words? Thank you.
Mr. President, distinguished guests, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this vital mission that affects the veteran community so much. The Bible says in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." God never wastes a hurt. These are the words I was told long ago by a mentor and friend, but never really understood their impact until I began the healing process from my trauma that I experienced in combat as a United States Marine. On March 23, 2003, in one horrific day, 18 Marines were killed that were part of Task Force Tarawa during the invasion of Iraq at the Battle of Al-Naziriyah. 3 days later, there was a friendly fire incident which rounds were mistakenly fired, resulting in the injury of Marines. After being honorably discharged at the end of my enlistment, I returned home feeling guilty for surviving, shame for feeling like I hadn't done enough. The war was still in my mind. I was detached physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I was angry and isolated from the world, including my family. Just 1 year after leaving the Marines, I decided to return to military service, this time with the United States Coast Guard, seeking a last-ditch effort to cope with the pain and regain my purpose in life. Unfortunately, my condition only worsened. In 2005, I attempted suicide. I was transported to a medical hospital, diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and shortly after I was medically retired. During this time, my wife was praying. She was asking God to help heal me from this combat trauma. I felt there was no one I could turn to, that my life just wasn't worth living. As a tough Marine, I was hesitant to seek the help I truly needed to recover. 2009, by God's grace and mercy, I was saved by Jesus Christ. After carrying these burdens that I had carried for so long, the newfound hope I had was my foundation now. In 2011, I participated in Wounded Warrior Project's Project Odyssey, a combat recovery retreat. For the first time since returning from combat, I was able to open up about my own personal experiences and help further my own recovery process. This was truly a turning point in my life that gave me a sense of new direction As a Wounded Warrior Project peer mentor, warrior leader, and national campaign team member, I am fully committed to serving the veteran community by giving my time and attention to listen, empathize, and encourage and help carry the burden shared by countless veterans facing similar struggles after war. I've realized through my own experience how vital it is for veterans to have a positive support system, not only within our families and communities, but also within our government. Showing support and caring for those who are hurting. It's also important to let everyone know, let the country know, that they can be strong and ask for help if you are struggling. Mr. President, I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for your decision to implement this important initiative combating mental health and suicide crisis within the veteran community. I am so grateful for your actions in insisting veterans to get the help they need at such a critical time. Your leadership in this matter truly shows your care for our nation's warriors. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. That's fantastic, Chad. Thank you very much. I thought because she's so important to what we're doing, I could just, prior to Secretary Wilkie, ask Karen Pence to say a few words. And she's going to be leading us into the promised land on this very tough subject. Do you mind? Please. Either one, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say thank you for this administration realizing that this is an issue that we need to face head on. You are changing the culture. It's the leadership at the top. It's people like Chad being willing to be vulnerable. It's people like Dr. Van Dalen leading the whole task force of real experts who have been dealing with the suicide issue for many decades. And now all of us are coming together. We came together a few months ago at the Vice President's residence. We talked about how we wanted to go forward with this initiative. And I feel like right now is such an opportune time because we're all dealing with anxiety. We're all dealing with stress right now. So if I can do anything as lead ambassador, it's my goal to help take away the stigma of mental health, take away the stigma for people to be able to come forward like Chad to say, there was a time in my life where I wanted to end everything. And our veterans, I've met with so many of them who say to me, I don't go to that dark place anymore. And so we are giving them hope. We want them to know, and anyone who's considering suicide, that there are people out there who want to help. There is a way forward, and I just am so grateful and honored to be lead ambassador for Prevents. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So she had no idea I was going to do that, but I have to say that I did it about 2 months ago. I said, maybe Karen wants to say a few words. And she got up and she spoke for 5 minutes. She blew everybody away. She was the star, right, Mike? And I said, come on, Karen, you got to go. Great, great. Really appreciate it. You're going to do a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, let's go.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have been accused by some in this room of living in the 19th century and looking back on American history before I make any decisions. And I'm going to plead guilty to that for a second here and say that in the history of presidential campaigns and then later the administrations of a victorious candidate, there has never been a candidate or a president who put veterans front and center, first of the campaign and then of the administration. until you did. I'm going to speak for Mrs. Pence, and I'm going to speak for myself as the son of a grievously wounded combat soldier from Vietnam, and in Mrs. Pence's case, the mother of a Marine warrior. These are issues that we live with every day. And for the President of the United States to say it is about time that those who have carried the burden of freedom on their shoulders are put front and center in the national conscience. That is an enormous first step for this nation, and long overdue.
Thank you, Robert.
I've thanked Mrs. Pence. I want to thank two other people. First is our Executive Director, Barbara Van Dalen, who took this burden on herself, but took it joyfully, and is not only opening the aperture when it comes to a discussion of this last tragic act in a veteran's life, but also opening the aperture on a discussion, finally having a discussion on mental health and addiction. So Barbara, I thank you very much for what you do. And last but not least, I want to thank our Deputy Secretary, Colonel Pamela Powers, who took this on when she was Chief of Staff and has carried it across the finish line. I thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. President, I'll go back to that history. In the 1890s, one of your predecessors, whose portrait hangs in the green room, was alarmed at the reports he was receiving from the Frontier Army of countless deaths amongst officers and men on the far outposts of the American West. He was the first president to begin taking a look at those sad numbers, and it has taken these 130 plus years for another president to finally say, enough is enough. On any given day, 20 American warriors take their own lives. Those are active duty, guardsmen, reservists. The largest part of that number is from my father's generation in Vietnam. But another reason why this task force is so important is that it will point the way for the rest of the country. Growing up as a youngster at Fort Bragg, the leading cause of death amongst my classmates in junior high and high school was automobile accidents. Today, it is suicide. It is a scourge that is impacting every segment of this country. So I want to thank the President for having the vision to identify the real solution to this national problem, and that is us, each one of us. Each one of us can help end the stigma that has prevented America from taking on the important issue of mental health. Each one of us can work to change the culture that made it acceptable to ignore the signs of mental health and distress. Each one of us can learn to identify the signs amongst our friends, our neighbors, and our coworkers. So this day is the beginning of one of the most important national discussions America has seen. It is an effort to find a solution to a problem that does not discriminate amongst its victims: the poor, the rich, people of all races and creeds. So I'm going to end with a story that I've told before, and it was one that I was very familiar with growing up at Fort Bragg. The looming presence in the home of the airborne was Matthew Ridgway. In fact, he was so powerful that even the minor league baseball team's mascot is named after him in Fayetteville. General Ridgway commanded the All-American Division to victory in North Africa and Sicily, and then General Eisenhower tasked him with leading the airborne assault on Hitler's Fortress Europe on the night of D-Day. General Ridgway planned the operations for the All-Americans, the Screaming Eagles, and the Red Devils of the British 1st Airborne. But on the night of the invasion, he couldn't sleep. He fell out of his cot, and he reached for sustenance in the Old Testament, and he looked to the book of Joshua and God's promise to Joshua on the eve of the great battle of Jericho. And the Lord promised the general, "I will not fail nor forsake thee." Mr. President, that is what you have sent to the American people today and to the 20 million Americans who are in uniform and who have left uniform, that we will not fail nor forsake the people of the United States who have always carried, without question, our freedom on their shoulders. So, Mr. President, I thank you very, very much.
Great job, you did. So Karen Pence has stated beautifully just a little while ago that the two words anxiety and stress. And all I can say, Mike, is thank goodness we don't have any anxiety or stress in this job with these people back there. But I will tell you, we're working very hard on this problem, and I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress. I even noticed your number, 20. 20 is different than 24. You know what that means, each day. Hard to believe, each day. But 20 is a big difference, and we're getting it way down. And with some of the treatments that we're talking about, I think it'll go a lot lower than that. And Barbara, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank Chad. I want to thank you very much. It was a beautiful, beautiful statement. You've done such a fantastic job. I see General Kellogg. He's one of our great generals. He's done a fantastic job for me, and he's doing some very important things for me right now. So, General, thank you very much. Really fantastic job. And we will have another meeting soon, and that meeting will be a meeting of progress, because I know with Karen in charge and with the Surgeon General working along with Karen and the group that you have, I know every one of them, you're going to make big, big progress very, very fast. So thank you very much. Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. Mike, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to join you today. So 5 years ago today, 9 innocent parishioners of a historically black church were killed during an evening Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina. We all remember that tragedy, and this was a despicable act of evil that happened 5 years ago today. So we remember that somber day at that Charleston church as our hearts still break for the victims, and our prayers go out to the families. Yesterday, President Trump led and brought our nation together behind real, meaningful, substantial change to ensure that we have safe streets and safe policing. Part of that was having an incentive structure to implement the highest professional standards in our police departments through an accreditation process. This accreditation entails making sure you have de-escalation practices in place, use of force tactics in place. Part of that is prohibiting chokeholds, except in the event where lethal force is used. It also incentivizes information sharing and makes sure that if you have an officer who's had multiple uses of excessive force, that information is sent to a national database. And then finally, another prong of this was having co-responders who are experts in mental health going alongside law enforcement, because we know our law enforcement officials often have to deal with mental health, homelessness, and addiction, and having a co-responder who is an expert in this process will go a long way. This is progress, it's tangible action, and it's solutions. And today, as Senator Tim Scott said, this is not a binary choice between supporting police officers and between supporting victims of grave injustices like George Floyd. It's not a binary choice. There are not sides here. This is about America coming together. This is about human decency, and this is about justice. And when we see injustices, we recognize them. As President Trump said yesterday, all children deserve equal opportunity because we are all made equal by God. That is so true. First, let me point out that I have sat across from a police officer family that lost their loved one. I saw a little girl named Charlie who will forever grow up without a father, who will forever grow up without a father for prom, for the father-daughter dance. And it was heartbreaking to know that she lost her father, who was a valiant hero. But yesterday, I sat across from families who lost their loved ones in mass instances of injustice. And it was heartbreaking to hear their stories. It was a real tragedy. It was a tearful moment. It was an emotional moment. And it's one that the president, when I asked him in the Oval Office about afterwards, he said this: I love those families. I want to help those families. And President Trump means that, because this is about humanity. That is ultimately what this is about. And Senator Scott shared a very beautiful Bible verse with those families yesterday, and I just want to read it here to close. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. He shared that Bible verse with those families, and it was particularly meaningful to me, and I think to the families as well. And with that, I'll take questions. Yes.
First of all, you do a great job dealing with that feedback. I know that's not very mixed-minded. It's the worst.
Thank you.
All right, so the Trump administration, the Trump Justice Department, has appointed 6 U.S. attorneys to examine the actions of the president's political adversaries, but they've only opened 1 federal investigation into systemic bias in policing. So my question to you is, why are so many resources being allocated to make sure the president and his allies were treated fairly by law enforcement and not the same for millions of Black Americans?
So I think you're comparing two things that it's not accurate to compare on the level of the number of
Justice
attorneys
Department investigations.
looking into. First, we all know that this administration was dragged for years through a bogus investigation founded upon a dossier full of lies funded by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. It was an injustice to the American people who elected President Trump as President of the United States, who was then bogged down by an investigation which ended up with 2 words: no collusion.
But there were convictions, there were guilty pleas.
That's the first part of your question. But as to the second part, this president's taken real, tangible, concrete action on the issue of policing. We saw that yesterday. Guess who hasn't led? Democrats. They've engaged in meaningless symbolism as we saw them, kneeling for minutes on end. But this president isn't about gestures. It's not about symbolism. It's about action. It's about making sure someone like George Floyd never dies in that manner ever again.
You did not mention racial bias yesterday, nor does that executive order.
First of all, this executive order addresses the issue at hand, and I thought my colleague Jerron Smith handled this really well yesterday when he said this about the executive order on this very question. From you, he said, a lot of people want to make it about race, but it's about communities and individuals. You're trying to fix something that you can't really fix the heart of people, but you can fix individual pieces that deal with the real problem, which is access to opportunity. You can fix schools and remedy the disparities we see in schooling. You can fix policing to the degree we can at the federal level to incentivize good behavior and fair practices. You can fix the economy, as President Trump has done. He brought about the lowest economic employment rate for African American individuals and paychecks going up prior to this pandemic when we had to artificially shut down the economy. You can fix the individual pieces, but it's up to our country to change hearts. Yes.
Does the president talked about chokeholds yesterday. The bill that's been unveiled by the Republicans, Senator Scott and the Republicans, does not ban chokeholds. Does he think it should?
The president is fully in support of the Scott bill. They are working closely on that, and REO puts an end to that or incentivizes through the accreditation process to put an end to chokeholds unless there is lethal force use. We fully support the Scott bill and every element of it, and one thing I would note about the Scott bill is for years we've tried to make lynching a federal crime in this country, and the Scott bill doesn't. It's a great bill. It's more great action from Republicans, and we hope we can have bipartisan support.
But to be clear, the executive order does not ban chokeholds, and you can't actually do that, I don't believe, through an executive order. And this bill does not ban chokeholds. Does the president think that chokeholds simply should be banned?
So what I have from the Justice Act here is that this will also end the practice of utilizing chokeholds, and I would underscore the executive order does that through an incentivizing process. So we've done what we can, and we'll continue to do more, and we'll continue to work with the Scott bill, and there might be amendments to it, there might not, but we want to see this come to fruition.
Because it doesn't actually ban the practice. It encourages, but it does not actually ban the practice.
Yes,
we're
incentivizing to ban chokeholds unless in the case of where lethal force is used. That's the process that we're using, and I'll tell you this, it's a much better process than the Democrats, who so far have offered nothing, except a lot of bad ideas about this that would ultimately, I would note, defund the police department. Yes.
Kaylee, in the last day, 96 people in Tulsa have contracted the coronavirus. Wondering about this rally coming up on Saturday. Will the president or the White House take responsibility if people get sick and catch the coronavirus at this rally on Saturday?
So the campaign has taken certain measures to make sure this is a safe rally, temperature checks, hand sanitizers, and masks, so we are taking precautions.
But you're not requiring people to wear masks.
They will be given a mask. It's up to them whether to make that decision. CDC guidelines are recommended but not required.
And the CDC guidelines suggest that people practice social distancing. You're not going to be able to practice social distancing in a rally with thousands of people. So aren't you, in essence, bringing people to a rally where they won't be abiding by those guidelines, adhering to those
It's
guidelines?
a personal choice of individuals as to what to do, but if we want to talk about internal coherence, I believe that the media needs to work on internal coherence. This wonderful New York Post story, I don't think Stephen Nelson's here, but good job to New York Post, highlights the hypocrisy of the media where this is okay, protesting, this is not okay, Trump rallies. It's really remarkable, and I think the American people have taken notice when, for instance, NBC tweets at 4:05 p.m. On June 14th, rally for Black trans lives draws packed crowd to Brooklyn Museum Plaza, seeming to be lauding the protest. And then less than an hour and a half later, they say President Trump plans to rally, but health experts are questioning that decision. CBS had a similar logically inconsistent
these are protesters protesting against injustice, against racism and police brutality. This is a rally, a political rally. They're not going to be demonstrating for any kind of cause other than supporting the president. And I go back to my original question, will the White House, will the president take responsibility if there are people who catch the coronavirus and get sick? As you know, you've been to these rallies. Many of the people who go to the rallies, I've been to them too, are elderly, probably have pre-existing conditions that might put them at risk for serious complications if they catch this virus.
So first, let me know, you've been to rallies, these Trump rallies. We do rally in support of something. We rally in support of the president who got us the lowest number of Black unemployment in the history of our country and paychecks going up. We rally that HBCU funding for historically Black colleges and universities is permanent because of President Trump.
You're not answering my question. Will the president, will the White House take responsibility if people get sick? Can you answer that question?
You suggested that we don't rally on behalf of anything. So let me note one more thing. We rally
I
on
said
behalf
that you rally on behalf of the president. That's why you're
on
going.
behalf of criminal justice reform and the First Step Act, which President Obama and Vice President Biden talked about, but we did. And I would note this, if we want to talk about the efficacy of what we're doing, 1,300 health experts signed a letter about the protest saying, we do not condemn these gatherings, we support them as vital. So you have the health experts on one side saying this, and then all of a sudden a Trump rally is different.
You're dancing around the question. You're holding up a newspaper headline. That's very nice.
Work on your internal cohesion and get back to me, Jim. Yes, please.
Ms. McEnany, you have not answered the question. Will the president, will the White House?
I've answered 5 of your questions.
But my first question has not been answered. Will the president, will the White House take responsibility if people get sick?
I said to you, we're taking precautions, masks,
So you're not going to take
hand
responsibility?
sanitizer, Zeke.
Kaylee, so for attendees at this rally, the campaign is requiring them to sign a waiver to waive them of liability, acknowledging that there's an assumed risk with going to that rally. Does not the president have some responsibility himself to ensure, to set an example for the nation to stop, to prevent these larger gatherings or ensuring social distancing so that the American people, and people around the world for that matter, follow his example and preserve the most safe environment? Why is the president not following CDC guidance in doing that?
We are doing temperature checks, hand sanitizers, masks. When you come to the rally, as if any event, you assume a personal risk. That is just what you do. When you go to a baseball game, you assume a risk. That's part of life. It's the personal decision of Americans as to whether to go to the rally or whether not to go to the rally. But I would note that this concern for the rallies has been largely absent when it came to the protesters. People really note when CBS says thousands participate in a rally and a silent march for Black trans lives, and then this is more than an hour and a half later, President Trump moving ahead with the rally, serious risk of spreading coronavirus. It's really inconsistent. The media seems to not be interested in health so much as ideology behind certain events. So, for instance, you go and the lockdown protesters were widely condemned by the media who were protesting the lockdown, but then all of a sudden this protest for Black Lives Matter is lauded. It makes no sense. Ideology is driving the line of questioning in many of these cases, when it should be, if you're focused on science, you should be out there asking these same questions about
Kaylee, public health officials here, local officials, mayors in many of the cities where there have been protests, have encouraged those who attended those large gatherings and others to get tested 4 or 5 days after their attendance at the event. Does the president want attendees at his own rally on Saturday to get tested 4 or 5 days later to make sure that they didn't get the virus there, and who should they inform if they do come down with the virus after the rally?
It's their personal decision as to whether they want to get tested after, but I'd note testing capability is thanks to President Trump. 23.7 million people tested in this country so far. That's an extraordinary number. So testing's out there and available if someone chooses to do that. Jen.
Just one more, excuse me. Has the White House been monitoring this outbreak of violence between Indian and Chinese troops, and does the White House have any reaction? Is the president getting on the phone and talking to the relevant countries there?
So the president is aware of it. We're monitoring the situation between Indian and Chinese forces along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. So we've seen that the Indian Army statement that 20 Indian soldiers died as a result of the confrontation today, and we extend our deepest condolences on that.
Jeff, to follow up on Z, has the coronavirus task force been consulted? Have they done any modeling on how many people could get sick at the Tulsa rally or die from the Tulsa rally? Have they even been consulted about the rally?
The coronavirus task force, they're meeting today. I would first point that out. They meet regularly and they monitor the whole country. So they don't zone in on a Trump rally, they zone in on the whole country and analyze it through a database lens.
So they haven't specifically done modeling on the rally?
They look at the entirety of the country. That would include the state of Oklahoma, but they look at all 50 states in close consultation with governors.
Jay Powell this morning, the Fed chairman, Jay Powell this morning said that he thinks it would be appropriate for there to be more federal stimulus. Does the White House have any comment on his comments?
It's something that's being looked at, of course, of phase 4. No announcements on what those elements would be, and wouldn't want to get out ahead of the president, but I would note that this economy is robust and growing and coming back stronger than anyone could think from this because of the president. I mean, you look at retail sales surging 17.7%, unemployment insurance weekly claims falling. We have the fastest growth rate in American history in the third quarter, so we artificially shut down the economy, but we have a robust recovery happening and taking place, and that's thanks to President Trump. And there are a lot of good metrics, like new business applications skyrocketing, small businesses now opening at about 80%, Apple Mobility Index, that's practically pre-pandemic levels. So there's more work to be done, and phase 4 will address that should it take place. But we are encouraged by what we're seeing, that the Donald Trump economy is coming back, because ultimately investors and business owners have faith in this president. Yes. Jeff.
Thank you, Kaylee. You mentioned testing just now, and the president has also both been tweeting and saying publicly on Monday that if the country just stopped testing, that there would be no or virtually no cases left. That doesn't make sense. Can you explain what he means by that?
Yeah, it's entirely logical. When you do more testing, you identify more cases. Countries that don't do as much testing don't identify the same number of cases. I mean, it's pretty logical, exactly what he said.
Okay, so it's about identifying them, because he seemed to suggest that if we weren't testing, then those cases wouldn't exist. Is that just a misunderstanding?
That was not at all what he was saying. He was saying when you test, you end up identifying more cases, and we've tested 23.7 million people, positivity rate of 5.9%. So we are in a good place when it comes to testing.
And just along those same lines, the vice president today wrote an op-ed, I believe, in the Wall Street Journal, playing down the prospects of a second wave. Is the White House just confident that there's not going to be a second wave of the coronavirus?
The White House is confident that we have enough testing to identify asymptomatic individuals, that we have therapeutics that are promising, that we are working on a vaccine with Project Warp Speed that we hope will be there by the end of the year, and we think will be, and we have a robust public-private partnership that has shored up America's supply chain. So we are in a good place, and that's what the Vice President was noting. John.
Thanks a lot, Kaylee. Two subjects. The first question has to do with the lawsuit that was filed against John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, by the Department of Justice yesterday. The DOJ did not file a lawsuit against Simon & Schuster, nor did it file an injunction against the publisher. Why not? Do you still expect this book to hit bookstores, to be on Amazon, to be available for people to read on the 23rd of this month?
So that, as to why they went down that particular path, that's a question for DOJ. But what I would note is this book is full of classified information, which is inexcusable. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton should know all too well that it's unacceptable to have highly classified information from the government of the United States in a book that will be published. It's unacceptable. It has not gone through the review process, and that's where we currently stand. And I'd refer you back to Barr's comment on this, which is we don't believe that Bolton went through that process. It hasn't been completed, the process, and therefore he is in violation of that agreement. That was part of his quote from Monday.
On the other subject, the executive order the president signed yesterday during that event, in his comments, he acknowledged that there are indeed bad police officers. Is the president opposed to the idea of removing qualified immunity for police officers, even bad police officers?
Yeah, so qualified immunity, let me note, is a total and complete non-starter. What qualified immunity would do is it would really enable the police in this country to do their job. That's in the Democrat bill, and I'd argue this, Democrats, they say defund the police, defund the police. We hear that from Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Congresswoman Omar and others. Well, what does the Democrat bill do? By removing qualified immunity, what you're essentially doing is not allowing police to do their job. There would be a decrease in policing in this country. Our streets would not be safe. What President Trump has done is worked with law enforcement to improve law enforcement, to ensure that the bad cops that exist are pushed out of the system. The overwhelming majority of cops are good, so we've got to address the handful that are bad, and that's what the president's order has done. But taking away qualified immunity would make the streets of this country a whole lot less secure. Just look at what happened when we didn't have ample law enforcement out on Lafayette Square. A church burned and multiple officers injured.
So how do you handle a situation, Kaylee, of a bad police officer hiding behind the shield of qualified immunity?
Look, I would note that also the court has litigated this pretty strongly. It's been adjudicated. The Harlow court, in that decision, Harlow, the Supreme Court, talked about achieving a balance between allowing victims to hold officials accountable while also minimizing the social cost to the whole, the cost of police officers, for example, pulling back. So the Supreme Court has litigated this for decades and has approached what they think is the appropriate balance with qualified immunity. And I think it would go a long way just doing what the president did yesterday, having that national database of offenders so we ensure that a police officer doesn't leave one department and then go to another. Francesca.
Thank you, Kaylee. You outlined the White House's position on qualified immunity, defunding the police, but you also said earlier that the Democratic bill is full of bad ideas. What are the other quote-unquote bad ideas besides those two that the president would not sign a policing bill if they wound up in the final version?
So one of the things the bill does is it undermines due process. The Democrat bill would undermine the due process rights of every officer by making pending and unsubstantial allegations available to the public, causing reputational damage based on allegations alone. That's a really good example because what our database does is once a claim has been adjudicated, we know something was done wrong, it goes into a database that remains private. It protects privacy of the officers, but it is utilized to ensure that officer does not get to go to another department. What the Democrat bill would do is someone submits an allegation, well, we're going to violate the due process rights of this officer and put it into a system. We have to balance everything in this situation, making sure our good, hardworking, overwhelmingly good police officers are able to do their job, but ensuring that we do not have victims like the victims I heard about yesterday and the excruciating, painful, devastating stories of their sisters, of their mothers, and of their fathers.
Sorry, one other question on that and something else. So you're saying those are the three? That's it?
There's a number of things, but those are the ones that I've listed out so far. But there's
right.
a number of policies.
And on the president's rallies, he has also said that he has rallies on the books in North Carolina and also Florida, two states that have seen recent spikes in coronavirus. Who told the president that it would be safe to have rallies in states that are seeing spikes right now?
We are confident that there are embers out there that exist that will be able to put out those embers. Florida has a great governor. He's done a great job so far. We work closely with Governor DeSantis, and we believe that we will be at a safe place.
Who said it was safe?
Kaylee, Justice Gorsuch's decision from the Supreme Court this week against anti-LGBT discrimination was focused on employment civil rights law, but also have implications on housing, health care. how does the president want to see this implemented? Does he want it implemented as extensively or as narrowly as possible?
So what the president says is he's read the decision, they've ruled, we live with the decision, and we live with the decision of the Supreme Court. So that's where he stands currently. And in terms of how it's implemented, DOJ will lead the multi-agency effort to help provide certainty to the regulated parties.
I understand DOJ's role, but the president also has the opportunity to express his opinion and to lead, much like President Obama in 2013. Said he hoped the marriage decision from the Supreme Court would be implemented as extensively as possible. What is President Trump's view on the appropriate scope of the Gorsuch decision?
So DOJ will be guiding that entirely, so I will leave that to DOJ.
Will the president have any conversations with the DOJ about the implementation of the Gorsuch decision?
Not that I'm aware of. He might have had one I don't know about, but not that I'm aware of.
Question: does the president think that the Bostock decision is a win for civil rights?
Sorry?
Does the president think the Gorsuch decision is a win for civil rights?
So one thing I would say, I haven't not talked to the president about that personally, but one thing I wanted to read was from the Kavanaugh dissent. There were some real concerns that this was a complete distortion of how we do statutory interpretation, and Kavanaugh lays that out very nicely. But one thing Justice Kavanaugh did say, and I thought it was a very powerful quote, is notwithstanding my concern about the court's transgression of the Constitution's separation of powers, which was a grave concern as a separation of powers point that the DOJ argued in court, it is appropriate to acknowledge the important victory achieved today by gay and lesbian Americans. So I thought that was a very good quote from Justice Kavanaugh. Yes. Alexandra.
Thank you. On the plan to reduce U.S. troops in Germany, is there a timeline you can share with us? And could this decision, this plan, be changed or softened if Berlin agreed to increase its defense spending?
So the president addressed our presence, American troop presence in Germany, and he said we're bringing that number down from 52,000, about what it's at now, to 25,000. And the rationale for that, he articulated, was that Germany is very delinquent in their payments to NATO. They're paying 1%. They're supposed to be at 2%, and even 2% is low. It should be much more than that. Mike,
would he change his plan if Germany agreed to increase its
I wouldn't
defense?
get ahead of the president on making that decision. Michael.
Hi, thanks, Kaylee. I have one question, and then I have two quick questions from colleagues who have sent to me as the pool person. So on my question, back when two White House officials were tested positive for COVID, we all reported on an email that went out to West Wing employees instructing them that masks were mandatory to be worn in the West Wing at all times, with the exception of being when they were sitting at their desks alone. Obviously, none of the White House people that I've seen today have been wearing masks at all. Has that been rescinded? Has that instruction to West Wing employees been rescinded formally, or is it just still in place but nobody's paying attention to it? Or
masks are recommended but not required, excuse me, as I said.
Two quick questions.
I want to get to everyone in the room. So
these are from people who can't be in the room because of the restrictions. So
I understand, but I want to make sure I get to everyone in the room, and then we can come back.
Okay.
So, Rob.
Can I just get a clarification on your equivalence between protests in the streets and rallying on Saturday? Is it the White House position that outdoor events carry the same risk as indoor events?
It's our position that the media should not be making decisions about their guidelines to us about social distancing based on political ideology or what they think is the worthiness of the cause.
My point is there are good scientific reasons for treating the two events differently. One is outdoors and one is indoors.
Right, and there's not good logical reason for this, so that's the one thing I would keep going back to.
And could I also ask,
yes, Owen.
anything about the Secretary of State's trip to Hawaii to meet his Chinese counterpart?
So I have no information on that, but Owen. Yes.
Blake, different mask.
Oh, sorry, Blake. They sucked you in.
No
Blake.
worries, no worries.
Good to see you, Blake.
You too. A couple on the economic front. Earlier this month in Maine, the president was talking about Maine lobster, and he said the following. He said, if the European Union doesn't drop that tariff immediately, we're going to put a tariff on their cars, which will be equivalent. Can you give us an update on that? What is immediately, what is the status of potential tariffs on EU autos?
I haven't inquired about that today, but I will inquire about that, and I'll try to get back to you before 5 if that works.
And secondly, an infrastructure bill. Can you just sort of give us a broad outline of what the administration wants to see? Is that a reauthorization of the highway bill that comes up at the end of the year? Is that added on to a potential phase 4 stimulus? what does the administration, what does the White House want as it relates to
Yeah, I don't
infrastructure?
want to get ahead of the administration on our official plans for that. Infrastructure is something we've talked about for a long time, and it's something that we think that we could find common ground on, but it's up to Democrats to really come to us and make that happen. It's been mentioned as potentially a phase 4, but that's not in stone, but that has been mentioned. No formalized plans, though, on where infrastructure stands.
Is it $1 trillion? Is it $1 trillion? Up to?
We don't have a number on that right now. Yes.
On the Tulsa rally, can you give us a sense of which health experts the campaign and the White House consulted before deciding to hold it? Did anyone talk to the CDC about whether it would be a good idea?
Look, we are taking every single safety precaution that we can. And again, I would note this is probably question number 10 on rallies. And while we appreciate the great concern for our rally goers, you should exhibit that same concern for the protesters who are out there who are not socially distancing in many cases and not wearing masks. Chanel.
Thank you, Kaylee. Going back to the international front on China and India, you just mentioned that the administration is monitoring the situation, but the president has mentioned that he would be willing to mediate the conflict between China and India now. If he were to do so, what does that look like? Does that look like a one-on-one conversation? Does that mean bringing the two leaders together? Has the president indicated what mediation looks like for China and India?
So again, no formal plans on that beyond what I already said, and expressing our absolute condolences to the Indian soldiers that died as a result of today's confrontation. We extend our deepest condolences there. And I would note just that during the phone call on June 2nd of this year that President Trump had with Prime Minister Modi, they did discuss the situation on the India-China border.
On the relationship between President Trump and President Xi, the Chinese forces have been moving thousands of troops to that region. That it doesn't seem like that region is going to see de-escalation anytime soon. If you were to characterize President Trump's relationship with President Xi today, would you venture into that realm?
I would just say what the president has said before, that he is really appalled at the fact that the coronavirus came out of China. They weren't allowing flights into China, but were allowing flights out. They slow-walked information. The WHO seemed to partner with China in slow-walking that information about asymptomatic spread. So that is an appalling state of events, and the president is very upset by that action of China, or inaction in some cases, I should say. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I hope we start seeing more consistent headlines. Thanks very much.
Well, hello, Michigan. And thank you to really one of the hardest working members of the President's cabinet. He is a dedicated American. He's focusing on improving the lives of workers even in these challenging times. Would you join me in thanking the Secretary of Labor, Gene Scalia? He's doing a phenomenal job for America. Thank you for those good words, Mr. Secretary. To Secretary Scalia, Congressman John Molinar, Congressman Paul Mitchell, our great friends, to State Representatives Annette Glenn and Shane Hernandez, and all the incredible men and women of Chatham Gear and Casa de Steel. It is great to be back in the Wolverine State. Thank you for coming out in the sunshine on this balmy June day. Thank you for being part of a great American comeback right here in Michigan. I just had a great tour of these two great companies, Casa de Steel and Chatham Gear, two tremendous American businesses. I want to congratulate all of you for the job you do with these two great companies. 84 years, been building America with the steel that is American strength and providing the technology that's been providing for our national defense. And I have to say with these two great companies that contribute so much to a safe and secure America, as your Vice President and as the proud father of a United States Marine aviator who flies an aircraft, parts of which are made right here. Thank you for all of you do to keep America safe. It really is good to be with all of you. And I've had a great day in Michigan. I just had lunch at the Engine House over in Mount Clemens. Opened up on Monday. I couldn't decide between a cheeseburger and pasta, so I had both. And I know as of Monday, just like all of Michigan, restaurants are opening up in this great state because we're opening up America again. And before I go any further, allow me to bring greetings from another friend of mine, a man who loves the state of Michigan and loves manufacturing and steel like no other American I have ever met. Allow me to bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. You know, we've all passed through very challenging times over the last several months. But I'm proud to report to you, after all that we've been through, standing here today because of the sacrifices the American people have made, because of the incredible dedication of our healthcare workers, because of the way that American businesses stepped up. Every state in this country is now opened up again, and 3/4 of America's small businesses are going back to work. The transition to greatness has begun. And we're building and rebuilding this economy on a strong foundation of what we were able to do over the first 3 years of this administration. You know, when President Trump and I were spending time in Michigan back in 2016, he promised people of Michigan that we'd cut taxes for working families and businesses large and small, that we'd roll back federal red tape, that we'd unleash American energy, that we'd fight for free and fair trade that puts American jobs and American workers first. And President Donald Trump delivered on every promise he made to the people of Michigan. And we saw more than 7 million jobs created in the first 3 years. And I have to tell you, all of that progress would not have been possible without two friends that I mentioned right at the top. I wanted to give you one more opportunity to thank them. They are two principled conservative leaders. They've been partners with this administration every step of the way. They are deeply respected in the Congress of the United States. So would you join me one more time in thanking Congressman Paul Mitchell and Congressman John Molinar. Stand up and take a bow, guys. Thank you so much. They've been delivering for Michigan for the last 3.5 years, and the President and I are so grateful. And you know what? Because of that foundation that we laid, after all that we've been through as a nation over these last several months, the American comeback has begun. In fact, just a few short weeks ago, we actually saw in the month of May alone the largest one-month increase in jobs in American history. It's true. The experts were all telling us, weren't they, Ms. Secretary, that we could lose 8 million new jobs in that report. They said unemployment across the country might go from 14% to 20%, but actually the American people proved them wrong. And in the last month alone, America's businesses created nearly 3 million jobs. And we didn't stop there. Last week, the experts also predicted that retail sales would only grow by about 8%. But the American people knew they had another think coming. As we say down in the Hoosier State, they shattered expectations. Retail sales soared by 17.7%, the largest monthly increase in sales ever recorded. The American people are driving a great American comeback. And as I stand before you today, I want to make all of you a promise. A centerpiece of this transition to greatness, a centerpiece of this comeback is going to be law and order in every community, in every state in the nation. Let me say from my heart, what happened to George Floyd in Minnesota was a tragedy. It shocked the conscience of every American. There's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting and violence that ensued in cities across this country. You know, like every American, we cherish and will always defend the First Amendment right of every one of our countrymen. We respect the concerns of peaceful protesters. But the people of Michigan know that most of the men and women who put on the uniform of law enforcement every day are the best people in this country. And we'll stand with them. I mean, we're listening, we're learning. And the action the President took this week reflects that we're leading. But I'll make you all a promise. We're not going to defund the police. You know, my uncle was a police officer in Chicago, not real far from here, for his entire career. He's one of the heroes of my youth, but I'll tell you, every one of us knows that men and women in law enforcement really are the best of us. They put on that uniform every day and they go and risk their lives to protect and serve our families. That's why the President and I sat down with leaders of law enforcement. We sat down with leaders in the African American community, and President Trump took action this week, signed an executive order to make immediate resources and training available to police departments. We're going to work with law enforcement, work with our African American leaders and neighbors, and we're going to improve standards for the use of force for every community in the country. We're going to help our police to improve. We're also going to support law enforcement with resources and reform, but I promise you, we're not going to stop there. As President Trump said in Dallas last week, we're also going to work with the Congress to continue to move forward an agenda that not just includes public safety, but one that creates more jobs, more prosperity, and more educational opportunities for African Americans and all of our minority communities in the cities across the country. I mean, for the last 3 years, I'm proud to report to you that because of the policies that these congressmen supported and this president advanced, we saw the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans in this country. We saw the creation of more than 8,000 opportunity zones, generating billions of dollars in investment in underserved communities. And we're going to continue to work jobs and investment in our major cities in the country, not just for African Americans, but for every American. We're also going to address something that we learned about in the coronavirus pandemic. We saw early on, as I led that task force, that the coronavirus was impacting African Americans and other minorities in a disproportionate manner. What the experts told us is that was evidence of historic disparities in health care among our neighbors in the African American community. So we're going to bring free market solutions to give minority communities more choices in health care to improve their lives. It's about jobs, it's about health care, but it's also about education. You know, the reality is today that many of our African American neighbors are required to send their kids to some of our most failing and dangerous schools. And that's why this president, this vice president, and our administration are going to continue to fight every day to give African Americans and every American family the right to choose where your children go to school, whether it's public or private or parochial or religious. The American people believe they should decide where their children get their education, and we'll fight for it. So in the midst of all of this, I promise you, we're going to continue, as I said before, to listen, to learn, to lead. And we'll form a more perfect union, which is America's ongoing mission. We'll put Americans back to work. We'll bring our nation together as we open up America again. You know, the comeback that we're celebrating today would not have been possible without all of the efforts and sacrifices that all of you have made and companies like this made. It would not have been possible without the leadership of President Donald Trump and the partnership that we forged with states across the country. And this president, before there was a single coronavirus case in America, you all deserve to know, President Trump shut down all travel from China. It bought us an invaluable amount of time to stand up our national response. It's remarkable to think also that at the end of February, when he asked me to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we'd actually performed only about 8,000 coronavirus tests in the entire country. But now, because of the public-private partnership that the President forged with American commercial laboratories, we're testing roughly 60 times that number every day. We're testing 500,000 Americans a day and have performed 23 million coronavirus tests, more than anywhere in the world. And we've been giving states what they need when they need it. And I'm proud to report to you, working with the state of Michigan, we delivered more than 560 million masks and gowns and face shields and personal protective equipment for our healthcare workers. But it was those efforts by industry, those efforts by the President, mobilizing a whole of government approach, even a whole of America approach, that launched our national response to the coronavirus. But ultimately, it was because of all of you that we are where we are today. Every single day, we're one day closer to putting the coronavirus in the past. Because of the sacrifices of millions of Americans who stayed home from work, from school, from places of worship, who closed down businesses, putting the health of their employees, their customers, and their community first. You made a real difference. And it's also a credit to the incredible healthcare workers in this country. I must tell you, the heroes of 2020 are the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare workers, and the first responders of America. They looked after our families as if they were their own, oftentimes without regard to their own personal safety. They went into harm's way. And here at Chartham Gear and Casa de Estilo, you did your part. Chartham Gear, I'm told, stayed open during this pandemic, didn't let go any of your employees at any point. Thank you for your commitment to your workers. And I'm proud to say the Paycheck Protection Program that these congressmen supported helped them do that. And we were proud to be able to partner with you, keep people on the payroll, and the President just extended Paycheck Protection just about a week ago. But it wasn't just about keeping people on the payroll, keeping people working. This company you also helped our healthcare workers. I heard all about it. I talked to one of the guys working at the company who figured out how to print 3D masks, safety glasses, and face shields. And though production did slow during the first few months, I know you're on your way back to full capacity. But let me just say thank you. Thank you to Chartham. Thank you to the Chartham team. Thank you for keeping this business rolling, but thank you for what you did for the health and well-being of the people of Michigan. We're grateful. And I'm also told that when a local General Motors plant came to Casa and asked for help in building life-saving ventilators, this company stepped up and helped to create a new facility to manufacture life-saving ventilator parts. I mean, you met this moment with ingenuity and compassion and resolve. Because of your work, I was told this morning General Motors is on track. It's one of our partners, along with several other great companies. But GM alone, with your help, is on track to build 30,000 ventilators by the month of August, and America is well on the way to producing 110,000 ventilators in less than 100 days. Thanks to all of you, because of American manufacturing, no American who required a ventilator was ever denied a ventilator in the United States. And I want to thank you for that. You know, as I said, when the President tapped me to lead this coronavirus task force, he said he wanted a whole-of-government approach, government at every level, federal, state, and local. But it was clear to me what President Trump really meant was a whole-of-America approach. And the way that American manufacturing stepped up even before being asked is deeply inspiring. When I think of that warlike mobilization that created personal protective equipment, that created ventilators, that stood up testing by the millions across the country, I only have 3 words to say. Only in America. Am I right? I mean, people like all of you, people at Chartham and Cassidy, you're really the living embodiment of American strength and resilience, both as a group but as individuals. I know it's personified in a man who I was told has spent over 30 years in manufacturing, who's a true Michigander through and through. I heard he worked his way up the ranks from a machine leader to night shift foreman to shop superintendent to manufacturing coordinator. Now he actually leads the company as president of Chartham Gear. Would you join me in thanking Mike Brosco? Where are you, Mike? Take a bow. Will you? Thank you again. He's also like the son of Italian immigrants whose parents came to America in pursuit of a better life 60 years ago. I'm told his parents boarded 2 separate ships that were named after our 2 great founding documents, the SS Constitution and the SS Independence. And their son would go on to found Cassidy Steel in 2001. He built this company in one of the largest steel fabricators in the state of Michigan. It's a great American success story, and today just so happens to be his birthday. So would you join me in thanking Bruno Cassidy? Thank you, Bruno. Thanks so much. And happy birthday. And while you're at it, while you're still clapping, why don't you join me in thanking his mom, who is actually with us here today. Maria Cassidy, are you with us? Take a bow, Mom. What a great family. Come on, Mom, take a bow. What a great family. What a great family and what a great business. You know, we've all been through a lot in these past few months, but we responded just like the American people always do. We came together, and we're moving forward. Because of the sacrifices that you made in those 45 days to slow the spread, because of the way the people of Michigan, the people of America, put the health of family members and neighbors and people they didn't even know first, because of the way that businesses stepped up, put health first, and then also leaned in to make a difference as we stood up our national response. I'm proud to report to you, as the head of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we slowed the spread. We flattened the curve. We cared for the most vulnerable, and we saved lives. And I promise you, in the days ahead, we're going to continue to create a solid foundation for whatever challenges may lie ahead. And we're going to do it in a way that puts America back to work. Every single day, we're proving, as you are here in Michigan, that we can safely reopen America. And you have our thanks. It really is great to be back in Michigan. I'm going to let you all get out of the sun. And I got a plane to catch. I will tell you, I ordered a pizza to go at that restaurant, and we're going to be eating it on Air Force 2, Gene, just so you know. You know, we live in challenging times. Not just the months through which we have passed, but the following weeks through which our nation has seen great strife, heartbreaking losses, inexplicable violence against innocent civilians, property, and law enforcement. Sometimes you turn on the television, it seems like there's more that divides us in these United States than unites us. But I'll always believe that there will always be more that unites us in this great country than could ever divide us. And chief among those virtues and values is this is a nation that loves freedom, and this is a nation of faith. As we see Americans stepping forward bravely, safely reopening their communities and their states and their business, it just reminds me what a freedom-loving country this is. I've been traveling around the nation, and I see the way the American people are stepping forward safely and responsibly, showing we can exercise common sense and exercise our freedom and move forward. And it's truly inspiring. But also, I would just say to each of you that maybe from time to time bow the head and bend the knee. If you're inclined to pray from time to time, I'd encourage you to pray for America during these challenging times. First off, I'd ask you to pray for all the families that lost loved ones in the midst of this coronavirus, and for all of those that have been challenged in these most recent days. You know, the Bible says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and that should be our prayer for all of those who've endured loss. I also encourage you to pray for all of those healthcare workers, first responders, that even at this very hour are continuing to meet this moment with compassion and care and professionalism that inspires us each and every day. And lastly, I would just encourage you to just pray for all of the people of this country. The President said not long ago that we, as I said, he said we grieve together as a nation, but we heal together. You know, the good book says that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, that he'll hear from heaven and he'll heal this land. So pray for America, and we will heal America and heal our land as we put America back to work. So thank you all for coming out in the sunshine. I'm going to let you go cool off, but it is great to be back in Michigan. I want to thank these two great companies for the warm welcome as we begin this transition to greatness, this great American comeback. I'm absolutely confident that with President Donald Trump in the White House, with all the great men and women of Sterling Heights working hard to open up Michigan and open up America again, I just know the best days are yet to come for Michigan and America. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States.
Okay, thank you very much. It's an honor to see you all today on this beautiful afternoon, White House. We're here today to discuss our efforts to support our nation's small businesses, working very hard, and safely reopen America, and that's what's happening. We're doing record numbers. We're doing numbers like nobody's ever seen before, actually. I'm thrilled to be joined by two good friends of mine, Governor Pete Ricketts of Nebraska. Pete, thank you very much. And a man that I'm going to see a little bit over the weekend, and this was really by coincidence that you happen to be here today, because it was for a different reason. It has to do with small business. Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. And we're going to be in Oklahoma, and it's a crowd like I guess nobody's seen before. We have tremendous requests for tickets, like I think probably has never happened politically before. And one of the reasons we chose your state, as you know, Kevin, was that you've done so well with the COVID. You've handled it incredibly well. We appreciate you both have, actually. You both have, so congratulations. Along with several extraordinary small business owners from their state. Also with us are Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, and Small Business Administrator, Jovita. Thank you, Jovita. Very good. Small business is no longer small business, it's big business. It's one of the biggest businesses. As a result of the virus, 22% of small businesses were forced to close earlier this year, including 41% of black-owned businesses. But under my administration's strategy to vanquish the virus and restart our economy, small businesses across the nation are now safely reopening. All over the nation, they're reopening at levels like nobody's seen before. We're sheltering individuals at the highest risk. If you look at really high-risk individuals, we are really watching them and we're taking care of them. And we know what the high risk means, but largely it means older people, especially older people, senior citizens that have a tremendous, if they have a problem, if they have a heart problem, if they have diabetes, if they have any kind of a problem, they're much more susceptible. So we're all watching that very closely. We've learned a lot over the last number of months. In the past 4 months, we've conducted over 25 million coronavirus tests and distributed over 1.5 billion pieces of personal protective equipment. America is better supplied and more prepared to re-enter than, I would say, just about any other place. You look at what we've done with ventilators. We're now making thousands a week of ventilators, very big, expensive, complex equipment, and we're sending them to other countries, and we're all stocked up. Our country is totally stocked up. Everybody has their ventilators, that maximum they can use, but we are sending them to other countries. The nice part, and I say it a lot because I think it's pretty amazing, when we came here, you had very few ventilators in this country, and by the time we started, not one person that needed a ventilator didn't get it. So everybody that needed a ventilator got a ventilator. There wasn't one instance anywhere in our country, and we stocked up those shelves. The cupboard was empty, and we filled up the cupboards. In the past 4 months, tremendous things have happened, but I think probably the biggest thing of all is the knowledge that we've gained of this disease, of this plague, of this virus, call it what you want, to help small businesses survive the shutdown. I approved over $670 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, and Steve, that's been a tremendous success. And we're talking with Democrats about doing something further now, but the numbers, the way they're coming in, it's been really incredible. So we're able to spot it, but we're here to help businesses and to help people. To date, we've processed over 4.6 million small business loans, saving and supporting an estimated 50 million American jobs, Jovita. That's incredible. The small business owners that we have with us this afternoon all received the PPP loans, and now their businesses are on the road to recovery, and they're doing really well. We have a lot of businesses that are doing really well. We're talking about a V-shape. We're almost like an I shape. I is straight up and down, but I talked about V-shape, and a lot of people disagreed with me. Not everybody, but a lot of very smart Wall Streeters were disagreeing. Now they're pretty much coming on board, saying it looks like it could be a V. So a V is the thing we were shooting for, and it looks like that's what we've got. I want to thank our people and my representatives for their decisive actions. And last month we added a record 2.5 million jobs. It's the highest in the history of our country in 1 month. That's the highest number of jobs, 2.5 million. The Dow rose above 26,000 points, and we saw the largest surge in retail sales ever recorded. Next year is shaping up to be one of the greatest years in the history of our country from an economic standpoint. I truly believe that. I think we're going to have a great third quarter. We're going to have a great fourth quarter, and next year is going to be a phenomenal year. I believe that NASDAQ actually set the record. During a pandemic, NASDAQ they broke their record, Larry. Is that a correct statement? So it was higher than even before. It's an amazing achievement. After I was elected president, our country added more than 7 million jobs, 12,000 factories, and trillions of dollars of wealth. We created nearly 9,000 opportunity zones, and African American, Asian American, and Hispanic American unemployment and poverty reached all-time lows. We had the greatest employment numbers we've ever had, and then we had to turn it off. We saved millions of people by doing it. We did the right thing, and now we're turning it back on, and the numbers are going up much, much faster than anybody would have thought. And it's a great honor to see it. And these two governors, by the way, have done a fantastic job. Two very extraordinary men, Nebraska and Oklahoma. We built the strongest economy the world has ever seen before the virus, and together we're doing it again. So we did it before the virus, we had to turn it off, and now we're doing it again, and that's what's happening. So now I'd like to, maybe we'll start off with Governor Ricketts, and then we'll get to my friend over here. I'll be seeing so much of you in the next couple of days. I'll take you second. Okay, thank you very much. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and to all of your team here. We really appreciate your effort, your leadership, and that of your teams to be able to help us through this pandemic and really give us the tools to be able to manage it. The PPP program you mentioned has been tremendously successful in Nebraska because of the great relationships our community bankers have with our small businesses. We were able to take advantage of that and really cover over 80% of our payroll. So it really was a fantastic way to be able to keep people working. We had the third lowest unemployment rate in April, and we want to keep people in their jobs. We really appreciate all the work you're doing. And we've, you may recall we were one of the few states that didn't issue a stay-at-home order or a shelter-in-place order. What we did is try to take common steps and ask people to take responsibility, to be able to follow the directives that you all were putting out with regard to avoiding large groups, washing their hands, that sort of thing, and making sure they keep 6 feet in distance in public, that sort of thing. And by doing that and targeting specific higher risk businesses that we asked to shut down for a shorter period of time, we were able to stem the tide of the virus. We've actually got the lowest hospitalizations in our state right now we had since the end of April. So it's got a nice bell-shaped curve where it went up and now it's come back down. Our cases are steady and flat, and now we're just really in the mode of managing this. You put the 10-person rule in place in mid-March, and that bought us the time to be able to strengthen our contact tracing, our testing, our PPE, our quarantine space, put plans in place to help at-risk populations, and put our rules in place. And that's what gave us the opportunity to be able to manage it. So we really appreciate all that you've done, Mr. President. Thank you.
Well, you've done great, and thank you very much. And how did you do with your floods? Because you had tremendous floods.
We're still actually recovering from the floods from last year. So we got kind of the double whammy. Agriculture in particular has really taken a heavy hit between what happened then, last year with the flooding, and then the pandemic this year. But again, your administration has been helpful. The Phase 1 China deal, for example, gives it a great mark to be able to sell things. So we really appreciate all that you're doing to help us recover through these terrible tragedies.
And they are buying a lot, aren't they?
They are, and that helps. That makes such a difference, Mr. President. I can't tell you. When people aren't driving, they're not using ethanol, right? Because that gets blended into our fuel supply. When our food processing facilities are impacted by coronavirus and they're slowing down, our ranchers don't have a place to take their animals. So there's a lot of impact to agriculture, and your administration has been great in working with us to be able to help them through it.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it. Governor?
Well, thank you so much for having us, Mr. President. And on behalf of Oklahoma, we're so excited to have you. And like you said, I don't know if people caught that, but over 1 million people have requested tickets to come to this event. So it's just going to be an amazing. Oklahoma's ready for your visit. It's going to be safe, and we're really, really excited. But during this whole COVID crisis, as we've been fighting it, your administration has been having calls twice a week. The Vice President have been so helpful to myself and all the other governors, listening to what our needs were and providing everything we need. So it's just been going great. And so we're one of the first states that has safely and measurably reopened. We went to Phase 3 on June 1st. So we're 56 days into our reopening plan. And currently we have under 200 people in the hospital across the state of Oklahoma. And we had an uptick in the number of cases, and so the media tries to talk about that. But we knew we were going to have an increase a little bit because we're 56 days into reopening. But what's interesting, it's the 18 to 35 group that we've seen a slight increase, but they're the asymptomatic, and we're testing so many more people right now than we were initially, and the positive cases are still 3.8%. So we've seen a steady decline in the hospitalizations, and we have to learn. I tell Oklahomans that COVID is in the U.S., it's in Oklahoma. We have to learn how to be safe and how to have to move on. And so we were able to build capacity, because the whole reason I issued 25 executive orders in Oklahoma was to build capacity in our hospitals and also the PPE, and we were able to do that and really flatten that curve, and that was our objective. And I told Oklahomans the better they do in that period of time, the quicker we can start reopening. And that's exactly what we've done, and Oklahomans are being safe, and we can see it in our numbers, but we're ready to get things back to normal and get life back to normal. So again, we can't wait to have you in Oklahoma on Saturday.
Great job, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jovita, please.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to meet Glory and also to be, thank you, and also to be able to visit many businesses throughout the states. I traveled to North Carolina as well as Dallas and visit with the faith base and the lending community, as well as some small businesses, to feel and see and as evidence of how PPP is actually working, not only in the faith base, not only in the small businesses, but also the lending community. What more can we do to facilitate more capital for the small businesses? The underserved communities are also being sought after. We've asked the lenders, the very diverse lenders that we've signed up, over 5,400 of them, to provide outreach, very aggressive outreach to our inner cities and underserved communities. I've spoken with some of the governors, I've spoken with the mayors as well, that we need to do more. There's over $100 billion available remaining in the PPP program, a very successful program. You've shared, Lori, how you've been able to transition your business from a very high end to a takeout and still maintain the customer base. And we're realizing this, Mr. President, throughout the states and every state that we visit. Now, the fact that SBA has been able to have a touch point of over 10 million small businesses. We have 50 million that you indicated of employees in one portfolio, and another about 9 million in the other portfolio. So at some point, we will be providing technical assistance, providing some coaching and counseling to be able to solidify those relationships that the new businesses have developed with the lending community. So I thank you, President, for your
Thank you
all
very
support.
much. And you know, they've done like more business in 4 days than they did in 4 years. It's become a big business. Small business is now big business, so thank you.
Thank you.
Doing a great job. Thank you very much. Steve, please.
Mr. President, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see your economic programs working, especially for small businesses. The PPP has been a tremendous success. We've seen that in the employment numbers. We still have more work to do. We want to make sure that every single person who lost their job because of COVID gets back to work, and we won't be done until that happens. And I'm also pleased that this week, working with the Federal Reserve, we've opened the Main Street funding facility. Again, that will be accessible to small businesses down to $250,000 loans. So again, a massive amount of liquidity that's been pumped into the system for small businesses.
Thank you. Larry, how are we doing today?
Well, weekly unemployment claims fell for the 11th straight week. It's a good sign. We're going to have job numbers in June, and I think will be very strong. I agree with Stephen. I think the rescue plan worked. I think the PPP was superhuman, probably saved 55 million jobs, and we saw that with a 3 million job increase in the May numbers. I compiled my list of green shoots, sir. We've got Apple Mobility for traveling almost back to its pre-pandemic high. Home builder demand and confidence is very, very strong. Automobiles, car sales are moving from 8.6 million to 12.2 million as the factories reopen. As you noted, the retail sales number was a spectacular 18%. Michigan consumer expectations, very strong today. NFIB Optimism Index, expect economy to improve, a record jump. Expect economy to improve, a record jump. And manufacturing, the Philly Fed and the New York Fed, future activity indexes are off the charts. If I play reference to the Congressional Budget Office, if we get a 20% increase in Q3, which I think is quite possible, 20% increase in Q4, and a 5% increase in Q1 2021, we will be back to where we were in 2019, we will have made up for the lost ground.
Amazing.
It's not going to take
That's
5
amazing.
years. We will have made it up with some decent numbers by the first quarter of 2021.
That's called a super V, right?
Super V. I like the I scenario.
It's called a V. It's called a V plus. Well, that's where we're headed. But we were headed to great things, and then we got hit by the Chinese plague. So that happens too, and things happen that you don't expect sometimes. So, but we built it once. We're now building it again, and it's going to be even more successful, in my opinion. Kaylee, please.
Yes, Mr. President. I would just note that the V is indeed an I, and you've described this economy like a rocket ship previously, and I think the numbers you laid out are worth reemphasizing because it's exactly that. 2.5 million jobs added, blowing past expectations. You had the experts off by about 10 million jobs. That's quite an extraordinary number to be off by. Also, the Dow above 26,000 points. You mentioned the NASDAQ setting the record. 7 million jobs, 9,000 opportunity zones. You're the jobs president. You did this once. You brought 7 million jobs, and quite clearly what the markets are saying is they have faith that you are the jobs president that will do this again.
So most people have never built a positive economy. We're going to do it twice, and the second time is going to be better than the first, I think, Steve. We have a shot at it, right? Okay, please, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Anthony Goins, and I'm honored to be here, Mr. President, representing the state of Nebraska. We were really focused on 3 things in terms of making sure that our economy stayed on track. And first, it was stabilization. So the PPP, the EIDL loan, gave us the liquidity injection that we needed to help us out. Debt servicing, our community banks work very closely with the small businesses to defer payments. And then we move into recovery. And when we talk about recovery, the $1.08 billion that we've received from the Treasury has been a huge help. We've broken it down into 4 programs: small business stabilization, rural broadband. We're giving $1 million for Gallup, and then we're also looking at taking workers that are in industries that are shrinking and retraining them in high-demand industries so we can put Nebraskans back to work in the right areas.
Well, you mentioned rural broadband, and we're doing that very big for the Middle West and for our farmers, and that's a very big factor. And as you know, we've started the process already.
Yes.
And I think you're going to be very happy with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you
sir.
very much. Appreciate it. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, governors, secretaries, directors, and honored guests. My name is Melissa Hegarty, and I'm proud and honored to be the invited guest of Governor Ricketts from the great state of Nebraska. I am a wife and mother to 2 young daughters, ages 9 and 11, as well as the co-owner of 4 bakeries in Nebraska and Iowa. We've been in business for 10 years and have approximately 92 employees. Early on in COVID-19, we decided not to lay off any employees, rather ask the ones that live at home with their parents to scale back on some of their hours if they can. By doing that, it would give the other employees that needed their shifts to be able to cover their rent and other expenses an opportunity to keep their hours. Most of our employees are in their early 20s with no families to fall back on, so it was critical for us to take care of them any way we could. It was an important decision for the federal government to allow each state's governor to decide how to formulate their own plan of how to close and in turn reopen their state. Fortunately, my businesses in both Nebraska and Iowa were able to continue to serve our guests inside the bakery while practicing social distancing, sanitizing between guests, all while everyone wears a mask. We had several terrible weeks of sales leading into Easter. It was easily the scariest time of my life as a business owner, not knowing what would happen next. We did apply for and receive Paycheck Protection Program funds through our small, locally owned bank, who we've had a strong relationship with since we started back in 2010. That program has been helpful for us to continue to meet our fiduciary obligations in terms of promises to our staff, as well as paying our monthly bills. As the virus continued past Easter, we were able to increase our delivery business while adding a new service for our guests, curbside pickup. But with curbside pickup, it did come with some challenges. So increased labor would be probably the biggest effect on our bottom line. Additional employees have been added to answer the phones, and runners are needed to take orders out to the guests waiting in their car. By mid-May, sales were picking up, and we did have our best Mother's Day ever, seeing double-digit growth over last year's weekly sales. So my Nebraska bakeries have now entered phase 3, starting this upcoming Monday, of Governor Ricketts' directed health measures. We anticipate our guests' desire to celebrate all of the life's events they missed over the past 3 months. New babies, birthdays, anniversaries, retirements, with our ultimate hope that it will transfer into a much busier summer than we normally would have. I want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this important discussion.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
honored.
Great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am honored. Thank you. I'll start over. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to be here representing small independent restaurant industry and the great state of Oklahoma. Thank you for inviting me. I am a small independent restaurant owner. I own and operate Stella Modern Italian Cuisine in Oklahoma City. My restaurant celebrated 10 years in business in April. Prior to COVID-19, I employed 30 people in the restaurant. When restaurants were closed for inside dining, I was forced to furlough some very dedicated and loyal employees for the first time ever. Since I did receive the PPP financial assistance, I was able to offer all of our staff their jobs back, and all but 3 returned. I want to thank you and Governor Stitt for working so hard for our economy and helping us reopen in a responsible and systematic way. Our industry worked very closely with Governor Stitt and the Health Department of Oklahoma on guidelines to reopen with a phased approach. It has been good to get back to work and to be able to serve our guests. Under the guidelines we adopted in Oklahoma, we are using data-driven points to ensure we are reopening our restaurants and economy in a safe and an efficient manner. In reopening, our number one goal has been to keep our customers safe as well as our employees. We know there's work to be done to create a sense of confidence in our diners as well as our employees and help people feel good about dining out again. We are diligently following all the guidelines on using PPE for our employees, doubling our sanitation practice, and encouraging our customers to follow the suggested guidelines for social distancing. Restaurants have always had outstanding protocol in place for safely preparing food and serving our customers in a safe manner. As you're aware, the restaurant industry has suffered greatly during this unprecedented time. Our job loss and lost sales has been overwhelming. So I want to thank you for working so hard for our economy and signing into a law, the CARES Act, which provides PPP forgivable loans to help our industry and our economy at large get back to work. There is more that needs to be done, and we appreciate the opportunity we have to work closely with you, your administration, and our congressional leaders for next steps to get our economy and our industry back to work and fully open. President Trump, America's restaurant industry is grateful for your leadership in guiding us through this pandemic. Thank you again for inviting me to meet with you, and thank you for Governor Stitt for your leadership in getting Oklahomans back to work.
That's very nice, and we're going to try and get deductions back for your restaurant industry, and you can look at that man right over there. He'll be carrying the message, but we're looking for the deductions for entertainment, restaurants, and I'll get it. You'll get it right back bigger than before, okay?
Thank you.
Working very hard on that. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honored to represent the lodging industry before America's first hotelier president. Grateful to Governor Stitt for his leadership and for the invitation to join today. My name is Pete Patel, first-generation American. My family and I immigrated to the United States in 1979 in search of the American dream. We found that American dream in Tulsa, Oklahoma as small business and hoteliers. Our company owns and operates 12 hotels in eastern Oklahoma. The current crisis, lodging was the first to suffer because of shelter in place. And we will be the last to recover. It may take up to 2 years. Before COVID, our industry had record occupancies, profitability, and new development hotels, thanks to the exceptional strong economy under your leadership, Mr. President. Because of COVID, occupancy dropped to 20% nationally, revenues fell by 50%, and 70% of all hotel employees were either laid off or furloughed. For the first time in my career, we were forced to lay off employees, and that was the most gut-wrenching experience that we've had. The Payroll Protection Program was a lifeline to our industry to help America's small businesses and our employees. The best thing for our business is that our economy opens. Grateful to Oklahoma Governor for his systematic, data-driven approach to leading our state back to opening. Currently, our occupancies have picked up a bit, but we still have a long ways to go as an industry as well as our market. The hospitality industry as a whole, as stated, are reopening hotels in a safe and healthy manner. The industry has implemented what's called safe stay standards, sanitization, PPE use, social distancing, things like limiting buffets and using grab-and-go prepackaged items. Swimming pools and gyms are limited with appointments for use. Guests and employees are only safe as how we make the properties, and the hotel industry has done a great job in adapting ways to make sure all of our employees as guests are safe. Mr. President, I would like to mention a couple of things. We need more states to reopen, consumers to feel safe to travel. Industry will need additional resources to help pay our bills. Increase cap on the EIDL program would be very helpful to us. And we need pressure relief from our local banks who may be stressed in these times coming up that have hospitality loans. We will need help from the Federal Reserve and FDIC on those two things. In conclusion, Mr. President, America's hoteliers are grateful for your leadership. We appreciate and you know what it's like to own and operate hotels. We are looking forward to working with you towards a swift and strong recovery. Thank you.
I'm impressed by your 20% number. If that was your low point, you're better than any hotel company that I've seen. We had Hilton and they were at 1%, right? And we had all of the big ones and they were from 1 to 4 or 5%. So if you're at 20%, congratulations. That's pretty good.
That was the average, Mr. President. There was a few of them that weren't that.
I can imagine. That's great. Great job. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you. As your domestic policy chief, what an honor it is to have all of these small business owners here at the White House. I'm reminded that just yesterday, Mr. President, we had veterans in. The day before, we were doing policing reform in the Rose Garden. The day before that, we were talking about seniors and taking care of our elderly and fraud. Everything you do, every day, every minute, is how to do the most for all Americans. And the small business, this is the backbone of our country. I'm from a town of 1,200 people, Glen Rose, Texas, an hour south of Dallas, raised by a single mom who had a flower shop on the main street of Glen Rose. Small business truly is the American dream at its very, very best. And the work that Secretary Mnuchin, that Administrator Carranza are doing for this country is extraordinary, but it's executing your vision. And so bringing today these small business owners to the White House, talking about how we're going to not just get this country back where we were just a couple of months ago before the pandemic from China hit, but to even greater heights than ever before. It's just an honor to be here, and I want to welcome and thank everyone for coming to the White House, and thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership.
Thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.